Good morning. Today is Monday. This is the second Monday of January. It is Monday, the 12th of 2026. It is a new year. This morning, we will be talking about some of the current events that are happening around our country, actually two of which are based in Minnesota, interestingly enough.
Interesting.
But we'll be talking about some of the things that are happening in our country and how, as Christians, we are to not only react, but how we are to think and, more importantly, pray through some of these topics. That is what we will talk about this morning. You are listening to the Dear Church podcast. Welcome to the Dear Church podcast, where we exist to fill your ears and your minds with the study of God to see the world as disciples of Christ. My name is Sam Yang. We have with us Pastor Eugene and Junsuk and Brian, who are here with us as well. I do have a quick announcement before we begin.
Yeah, Brian's wife is about to give birth any moment. Well, not really. Any day.
That is also an announcement.
Any day. So that means Brian's not going to be with us when he has his baby for who knows how long.
But like, he's not having it, so I don't, or he's not having him.
I don't know. When he had his first kid, he was out for like a year and a half or something.
I remember that. I didn't know who he was when he came back. But that is one announcement. That was the one that I was actually, that I had in mind. The announcement is, if you sent us your top 10% Spotify wrapped picture, then we prepared a gift for you. Now, I know that every year, especially for our church, and I'm sure churches around the world maybe, the merch that churches give out are pretty similar. You know, you'll have what were those metal cups that were the rage 2 years ago?
Mugs.
We had Yeti mugs. Then you had Yeti. What is the taller one? Thermoses. And then you have
Thermosai.
So this year we're actually doing something new. Each gift is personalized for that individual with our logo and our tagline. And so that will be coming in soon. It was individually crafted, I would say. Like, it was made for that individual. And so this year's gifts are going to be very exciting. So look forward to that. It'll be coming in hopefully fairly soon. So look forward to that. And maybe we'll even do a reveal on camera. Who knows, honestly. It'll be fun. Anyway.
What are we giving out? I didn't hear you tell us what we're doing.
No, it's a mixed bag of items procured for that individual. So I have received
You're really into this word procure.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I'm pro and I'm procuring.
I know you're pro.
Pro-life. What are you talking about? And did we do the intro? We did, right?
Yeah.
So that's just a quick announcement. That announcement took a huge left turn.
Wait, he did Welcome to the Dear Church podcast?
I did,
right?
yeah.
He did? Okay.
Yeah. And so, Pastor Eugene, today we are talking about four different current event topics. And I just want to start us off because there's a lot to get through. And is that okay?
Yeah, 4 different boys. Beginning of year. You know how you say EOI for end of year? So
yes, beginning of the year. On January 3rd of 2026 at 4:21 a.m., real Donald Trump tweeted this. He wrote, "The United States of America has successfully carried out a large-scale strike against Venezuela and its leader, President Nicolás Maduro, who has been, along with his wife, captured and flown out of the country." This was sent to the social media platform at 4:21 a.m. because the operation had occurred just a couple hours earlier. And so on Saturday, early January 3rd, the president, or the former president, Nicolás Maduro of Venezuela, was captured by U.S. military, who we know today as the U.S. Army Delta Forces. He was arrested and brought to the United States on federal charges. He was kept in a prison in Brooklyn, and I believe he went to court last Monday from our recording. So I wanted to kind of go through what happened here, why this happened. I mean, Congress didn't even know about it, so there was no way we would have known about it. So we were surprised by all of this, and I think some of the early reactions that I saw online and just amongst conversations is this even legal? Can we do something like this? Like, can we go into a different country and quote unquote kidnap the president of that country and bring them to our country? Like that seems like there's a lot of boundaries that were crossed literally and figuratively. And so I wanted to maybe just go through that. And I think as we hear this news, it might be beneficial for us as Christians to know how to respond to this news.
Great.
How to think through this.
Awesome. Super.
So this all starts in November 16th of 2025, where Secretary of State Marco Rubio on the U.S. Department of State page designated Maduro and his leaders as the head of Cartel de los Sols. Now, just to kind of give us some background information, where Cartel de los Sols comes from is actually they gained importance in the falling of the Medellin cartel. If you remember Pablo Escobar, I think that name is more familiar for a lot of people. During the fall of the Pablo Escobar era, that cocaine had to go somewhere. If your country is producing cocaine, it's not like you could survive off cocaine. Like you have to move it, you have to sell it. So that cocaine had to go somewhere, and so therefore people are accusing Venezuela of during that time being the avenue through which the cocaine was then shipped to the United States. Then moving forward to today, the accusation, the charges on President Nicolás Maduro, who was the successor of Hugo Chavez, was federal charges of narco-terrorism conspiracy, cocaine importation conspiracy, and 2 legal weapons counts based on allegations he helped ship tons of cocaine to the U.S. over a period of decades during his 25-year career serving in public office. So he was charged along with his wife, a son, and top members of his administration. Now, what's interesting is the fact that he and his top people were designated as a cartel gave the U.S. not the green light, but even the responsibility perhaps to then strike, which is what they did. A lot of people have been saying that this is highly illegal. You cannot do this. This is you're kidnapping. However, Donald Trump has stated the Monroe Doctrine, which he actually named the Donroe Doctrine.
He's a funny man.
He's good at naming stuff. Like the China virus was good. The Kung flu was good. What else is there? Meatball Ron.
That's the
Sleepy Joe. Speaking of, I do love a good Sloppy Joe. Crooked Hillary. He's good at making these little things. But what he called the Donroe Doctrine, just to give us some background, was instituted in 1823 under the President James Monroe, and it gave the U.S. power to stop European influence or interference in the Americas. And so now the West was considered the U.S. sphere of influence, and the U.S. would not then interfere with Europe. However, it's since been used to interfere in Latin America to maintain stability. We see examples of Panama, Cuba, and now Venezuela. So Trump has called it the Donroe Doctrine. And so that's just kind of a brief nutshell. Nutshell? What type of shell am I talking about?
turtle.
That's a brief
Peanut.
That's a brief
Cashew.
That's a brief nutshell of kind of what's been happening and what happened on January 3rd as well. So the question is, though, Pastor Gene, I think, and this is kind of where a lot of people are confused. Why does this even matter? I know we've been praying for our country, but is there even a Christian response? Like, what? Who cares?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are numerous angles that we could look at this in, and benefits to the country of deposing Nicolás Maduro. But just briefly for the Christian, I think the first thing that we usually think about is this in line with just war theory?
Yeah.
What we hold. Is this defensive? Is this beneficial? And if it's beneficial, to what degree? right? And so that's what we probably look at. Everybody thinks like we did it for the oil.
That's one thing because Venezuela has the number one, right, source of
Oil
reserves.
deposits in the world, yes.
Yep.
I saw this one interview with a Venezuelan. Venezuelan?
I think it's Venezuela.
Venezuelan?
Venezuelans.
Venisons. So this one interview with a Venezuelan, they said, what do you think about the U.S. just coming in here, doing all this to get the oil? And then he just went, what do you think China and Russian were here? Were they here for, they weren't here for our recipe for arepas. And I thought that was really good. It's true.
I've never had it, but I'd love to try one.
Yeah. You think, so the dominant forces in Venezuela was China, and they were China and Russia. And so we could go into that a little bit later, but is this just war? And is this, does it stand on, the just war theory in principle? Or can we at least make it that way? I think you can make the case. And I'll just really explain quickly, and then you could probably follow up with a lot of questions. Venezuela is, in many ways, the strategic point to North America, okay? Mexico, Venezuela, all those points. If you played Risk, then you know. The next country that's on Donald Trump's list should be Kamchatka.
Greenland.
No, we were talking about Greenland. So Greenland, Venezuela, and Kamchatka are the three places that can invade
if you play
North
Risk,
America.
you know.
Yeah, if you play Risk, you know. If you don't know, then play
Risk.
some board games. Yeah. Anyway, so Venezuela is a very strategic point in, the Western Hemisphere. When we're speaking globally, it was interesting that China and Russia had its hands completely in Venezuela. Forget about the corruption and all the illegal dealings there and all that stuff. What happened was they would push, like you said, cocaine, but also fentanyl, through Venezuela up north to where we are, which makes them, and this is what our government labeled them as narco terrorists. So Maduro isn't a president that they recognize because he, first of all, illegally came into power.
He lost.
And held that power with corrupt elections. And most notably, recently, he lost the election, but he still held on to power, even with all that corruption. So many people wanted him out. For 26 years, him and his predecessor, Hugo Chavez, really under their iron thumb, oppressed the people. People disappeared. People, look, I said I wasn't going to get into the corruption, but what they did was they effectively took Russia and China's money and did their bidding, including pushing up illegal drugs like fentanyl and cocaine into the North Americas, which is, the United States. Canada, yes, but Canada sends all their stuff down to the States too. It's all going into the States. So they were labeled, aptly in my opinion, narco-terrorists. And so because they are narco-terrorists, we should defend our country from this kind of imposition that Venezuelans were doing, or the Venezuelan government, which is, again, illegally instituted, right? Yeah. So that way, for me, it does make sense that it is just war theory justified, and that we should defend our country, especially when it's a country that has such a strategic vantage point into the United States, and we're having both of our enemies in they have their hands in the cookie jar, so to speak, because you like nutshell. I'll say cookie jar.
I also love cookies, so.
Yeah, there was this really great clip. I think we could show it.
What would you assume is the most major threat on the world stage? Anybody, just call it out. You don't have to raise your hand.
Definitely Russia.
Definitely Russia. That's confident. I like it. Who says Russia? Anybody agree with her? Hands? Okay, great. Who else?
China.
Stop yelling at me, but China is a good answer. Anybody? Who else? China?
North Korea?
North Korea. Any North Korea takers? And Venezuela? Anybody? No? Oh, yeah. one guy in the back, a little worried about Venezuela. Everybody's cool with Venezuela? No threat? Okay. Let me ask you this. Which one of these places can claim to have the largest oil deposit on the planet? More than Saudi? More than Iran? Wow. Okay, what about things like gold? More than all the mines in Africa combined? The fact is that Venezuela is arguably the single greatest resource of oil and minerals on the planet. So, why is this country in the midst of one of the greatest humanitarian crises in modern history? Let's meet President Nicolás Reyes. After rising to power on a wave of nationalist pride, in a mere 6 years, this guy has crippled the national economy by half. He has raised the poverty rate by almost 400%. Luckily for the rest of us, he's up for re-election. So, who's running against him? This is Gloria Bonalde. Now, Gloria is a history professor turned activist. She's running against him on a social justice platform and on the strength of, in my humble opinion, just not being an... Analyst predictions, as of today, have the chances of Venezuela's total economic collapse at 87%. On the news, they'll call it a crisis. But on the world stage, they'll call it a failed state. If you've never heard that term, other examples of a failed state in recent history are Yemen, Iraq, and Syria. And if that's not bad enough news for you, well, Venezuela is also the only one of these places within 30-minute range from the US of next-gen nuclear missiles. You will not hear about any of this on the news because the biggest players on the world stage do not want you to. To them, unstable governments are nothing more than the greatest of opportunities. So, Russia, China, can never be the most major threat until countries like Venezuela leave the door open to our very own backyard.
I find it, Brian, I'll send it to you. There's this really great clip in 2019. Tom Clancy's Jack Ryan, Amazon Prime, made that into a show.
Yep.
And this is when Jim Halpert,
Yes.
he would give a lecture in a school, and then he would ask, hey, what's the most dangerous, threat to the United States? What country? And then people would be like Russia, China. Someone said North Korea. And then he would make the case that it was Venezuela. And then that's absolutely right. Which is really interesting. Some of the points that Jim Halpert makes, again, not Jack Ryan and not John Krasinski, whatever that is, but it's Jim Halpert. So some of the points that Mr. Halpert makes in the show is that Venezuela, which is true, is one of the most mineral-rich nations in the world. Like you said, it has the largest oil deposits in the world.
Yep.
It also is one of the biggest. It has one of the biggest deposits of rare earth minerals, including gold. It has one of the biggest gold mines and reservoirs, or whatever you want to call it, in the world in Venezuela. And natural gas too. Like I said, rare earths, minerals, yes, true. And so it has all of these elements and deposits and resources in its country. Venezuela should technically be the richest nation in the world, but it is not, because of corruption, because of all this negligence, and how terribly Hugo Chavez and then Nicolás Maduro ran that country. And so even its oil exports kept on diminishing year after year, not because Venezuela didn't have the oil deposits, but because of its terrible infrastructure. They couldn't do it. So that's interesting. Secondly, what they did with that lowering, when they excavated all that oil, it kept on going lower, lower every year. But guess who they sent it to? They sent it to China and Russia. Over half of its oil exports were to China.
Yeah.
And so China needs a lot of oil, but they want to diversify their portfolio because they can mostly get it from the Middle East. So they want to diversify. So Venezuela was a nice way of diversifying. So, they would give them stuff. They would, contracts or whatever it is, defensive weapons and things of that nature for these oil exports to them. And I think it only made up about 5% of their oil exports. But over half of Venezuela's oil went to China. Russia also got a good hand in it. So maybe like 40% or something like that. So all of their oil was going to two of our enemies, not to the U.S. Not that the U.S. needs their oil. By the way, the U.S. doesn't need their oil. Even the amount of oil that is going to be given to the United States is very negligible. It's like less than 5% of what we would use, right? Not even globally. It'll power us. If we just use their oil, it would have powered us for like a couple of days. And so it's not that much, but it was giving our enemies strategic vantage points to our country, and they were taking advantage of it. They were taking advantage of it, including, sending drugs up here through Venezuela. And so, yeah, I do think that the just war theory applies in this case.
But can't you say, though, you can say that about anything. And I remember we talked about this 2 years ago with Israel attacking Hamas and Palestine. And we were talking about just war theory and how sometimes offense is defense in the sense of you go and you eliminate the enemy so that they cannot attack you. We can say that about anybody. If that is really the case, how come we don't go attack China? How come we don't go attack Russia? How come we attack Venezuela and just kidnap somebody like as if this is just a normal thing? Like, how come we don't do anything else, but we do this?
Yeah, we considered him an enemy of the state a long time ago, even before Donald Trump. Joe Biden had mentioned it. He even tweeted about it. And so these are things that our country had already established. And the fact is that under Joe Biden, we did diddly squat. Empty threats made us a laughingstock in the world. Like Maduro laughed at Donald Trump. He said, "Come get me, you coward!" Mm-hmm. Right?
He danced. I saw.
Yeah. So he did this little speech, and the next week we got him. But I think Afghanistan. I don't want to keep on revisiting Afghanistan, but Afghanistan, I think, is key in understanding how the world sees the U.S. under presidents like Joe Biden. People always think like, people laugh at us because we have Donald Trump as president. And I'll ask you this then. If you think the world is laughing at us because we have Trump as president, then which countries? Is it the European nations? Because I don't care. What about our enemies? Are they laughing at the United States when Donald Trump is president? In fact, we know the answer is no. We know the answer is no. We do have interceptions and messages from groups like Hamas who was hoping desperately that Kamala Harris would win because they knew that if Kamala won, then they would be able to survive a little longer. They were hoping and praying, I guess, to their God that Donald Trump would not win. So the enemies of the United States, they do not want Donald Trump because he does get things done. This is why I think it's really pivotal that we understand some politics. I'm not saying you should read it like all the time and be so immersed that you'll go crazy. That's all you could think about. But you should be aware of some, not 0 and not 100, but some. And so our presence in the world stage is profound. We are the greatest, most powerful nation in the world, not just today, but in history. And so when we continue to weaken ourselves and we continue to make ourselves a laughingstock, it really isn't good, not only for our own country, but the world. When a world power is unstable, then we see instability in the world itself because people are going to vie for power. Just basic common sense, I suppose. Right. And so this is what people want. This is what the enemies of the United States wants. And the enemies of the United States are pretty clear. It is places like Russia and China, which are substantial powers, but they do not compare with the power of the United States. And so how can they continue to weaken the United States from within and from without? Venezuela was a key player. Again, I reference, Jim Halpert. He was pretty astute in his assessment on how pivotal and strategic Venezuela was. Now that you've said all this, is it okay for us to kidnap a sitting president?
In their own home, in their own country.
Home, right. So, first of all, I will refer you back to how the United States never recognized Maduro as a legitimate president, but in fact as a narco-terrorist. And whether you agree with that labeling or not, we did label him an enemy of the state. And so those are, these are people that we would say we do not recognize your authority over the state. And we do understand while a country has a sovereignty, if, let's say, a terrorist comes into power, we will have an obligation to eliminate that terrorist because they are a threat to our nation. So these same people who hate Maduro, the fact that we quote unquote kidnapped Maduro, celebrated the fact that Osama bin Laden was killed at the time when Obama was president. They celebrated, Obama finally got this terrorist. And so now we see a huge shift in how the left and the progressives are thinking about terrorists who are a threat to our country. And so would I give them any credence in their understanding and definition, in their view on how they see us kidnapping Maduro? I think I would give them very, very little credence, if anything.
But there is an order to things. So, for example, if you had a mug of mine, let's say, and you had borrowed a mug, which you wouldn't, but if you borrowed a mug and you kept it in your house and I asked for it over and over and over again and you never gave this mug back to me, it doesn't mean I could break into your house and take your mug. That makes no sense. There's an order to things. So just like in Venezuela, there's a government there.
Yeah.
Right.
So here's your metaphor better placed. That mug really belonged to Brian, and you broke into Brian's house and you're holding the mug.
So I'm the bad guy?
Yes, you're the bad guy. So I will now break into Brian's house.
No, but you have the mug.
Depose you and take the mug away from you.
Wait, where am I? I don't have the mug.
You're in Brian's house. You're a thief. You're a robber. You're a liar. You're just a really bad guy.
Wait. Can we just backtrack? So you had the mug.
No.
That was mine.
You have the mug. That's Brian's.
Why?
Because again, you're a thief. You're a liar. You're a commie. And you lie through your teeth. So you continue to lie to the people in Brian's house that you're really Brian. And I'm telling the people, hey, he's not Brian. He's not Brian, right? Brian is somewhere like you took Brian and you either killed him and you buried. He's 6 feet under, or you put him like in some remote island,
Spain.
Yeah, Patmos. But that's what you did. So when I come into Brian's house, you could be like, how dare you come into Brian's house? But guess what? What if Brian's family loved it that I came to your house? They loved it. They're like, yay, get rid of Sam. We hate Sam. Like, if they said you're going to be like,
I never took the
look
mug.
at all these neighbors telling me that I did wrong for breaking into Brian's house when Sam is really Brian. And I'm telling the neighbors, no, that's not Brian. That's Sam. Sam is evil. Sam's a liar. He's a communist dictator. He needs to be deposed and he needs to be brought to justice. So I will take him and then I will bring him to the proper authorities. How about that?
So where is the mug?
I thought
you had it.
I took the mug and I'm going to give it back to Brian's family.
Oh, because it wasn't my mug to begin with.
It was never your mug. You could be dead.
Brian has no say in any of this, actually.
Brian could be dead. We don't know. I mean, if we really think about how evil Sam is, he might have killed Brian, for real. And the only reason why he wouldn't have killed Brian is beyond me. Why he wouldn't kill Brian.
Someone has to edit the podcast.
Yeah.
Okay, so if that's the case, there is a phrase called, and I'm just trying to think it from the other side. Like, some of the accusations that people are making is, okay, we get it that he might have been a bad dude, okay? But, I mean, why can't we go through the legal process? Like, two wrongs don't make a right. Why don't we go through the legal process?
He should have gone through Congress. He should have done this.
Right.
And that.
He should have gotten approval from Congress because.
So let's say Maduro is as evil as everyone claims he is. He's bad. He's like Hitler, that kind of thing. And so Hitler is out there. He's taken over all these countries. Right now he's in France. Let's say he's stationed in France. and we know that we can swoop in and kill Hitler. So should we have a full deliberation in Congress on whether we could kill Hitler? Again, an established enemy of the state. Okay, he's an established enemy of the state. Can we swoop in and kill Hitler, or should we deliberate and potentially give away our hand of surprise that we have over Hitler at the time, so that we could swoop into Paris, France, kidnap him, eliminate him, whatever it is, and effectively end the war? Look, I get it. There are procedures and things that need to be taken care of, but I do not think this was against protocol. And if you're saying we should have done this, we should have done that, I think you guys are the ones gumming up the system. There are things that are in the purview of the president to establish, especially if something is an imminent threat, and you could eliminate it with not only minimal casualties, zero human loss, right? It's nobody died from this. I think some people were injured, and President Trump is actually, calling them and making sure they're okay and all of that stuff. That's what I heard. But all of Maduro's guys died. And guess what? They were all like Cuban people too, by the way, because that's where they got their. But look at the incredible, ripple effect from Venezuela. Not only is China and Russia hamstringed to a good degree because of this, Cuba is about to lose, and Iran is about to lose. Mm-hmm. Like, this affected the entire world. Jim Halpert, again, was right. This dude is smart. And not only did he marry well, Pam Beasley was a really good find for him, even though he had to technically steal her away from Roy. But, that's unfortunate.
What's his last name? Roy? Anderson. Okay, so I understand that, and maybe it was a good thing that this happened. Like, okay, maybe it's lucky. I don't know. But there's a reason why there's processes for things. There's a reason why. And I get it that maybe if they had discussed this in Congress, we know that there's a lot of liberal congressmen and women, and they would have leaked this information to the press. And I get it.
There are people in Congress that want the destruction of the United States right now.
Yeah.
Congress obviously has, I guess everybody knows, has an all-time low approval rate. People hate Congress. They don't get anything done. They're just a cluster fumble. I believe that's what it's called.
There's another, yeah.
Yeah, so they're just incompetent. And so I want to say that sometimes if you really want something done, then you do have to go through legal routes. You have to do what is in your purview. And it can be iffy at times, and we'll work that out for sure. For sure, we need to work that out. Does the president have powers granted to him to do up to this point and things like that? But I believe, again, that he did. If it's an imminent threat to the United States, then we don't deliberate in Congress. If someone invades our country now, then we mobilize our forces now, that kind of thing.
I think for a lot of people, they think that this is a dangerous precedent. If you can say that about Venezuela, you can say that about anywhere. I'm not saying they will, but I'm just saying people think that this is a dangerous precedent because now, without Congress approval, we're carrying out operations in foreign territory.
Yeah.
So couldn't we technically say this about any country, anywhere?
I think this is about our history too, about, Vietnam, how long we could stay there. Nixon would deploy forces and things like that. Could we do that without congressional approval? And people agree. There was all this stuff. But, he did. He is the commander-in-chief, and he did. He did so believing this was in the best interests of the United States. There's one thing that we do in our country is if you don't like how the president acts, we can depose him by voting him out in the next election cycle. And this is what we can do. This is in our purview as citizens of the United States. And so we could definitely do that. You don't like what Trump did, then don't vote him in 2028.
Well, we can't.
Well, I'm sure people will.
What do you mean people will?
I'm sure people might write in Donald Trump. But all joking aside, This is the process that we have in place for deposing presidents. Okay, and so I think people are like, oh, this is a dangerous precedent that it sets. I think people don't understand history. Presidents have power, and there are some gray areas that we want to continue to, define and shore up. But there, it doesn't mean that we'll continue to not have gray areas where the president has these powers, and that's what leaders do. Leaders have this in their mind. What is the best that I could do for the people that I lead? Okay, the president of the United States has a great responsibility, a very, very heavy burden. Something that I personally would not covet. I know kids want to grow up to be president, but I don't think you should. I don't know if you really want this. It's because, every action that you make isn't not just for your 5 or 6 family members. It's for 350 million people in the country. Whatever action you make affects all of them. And so these are things that, the president has to live with for the rest of his life. I do not think that unless you're called to the position, you should take it. You should even covet it, to be honest.
But Pastor Eugene, honestly, is this a conservative view or is this a Christian view?
What's the conservative view that's not Christian?
I think someone might say, well, you're only saying this because you voted a certain way or you align a certain way with a political
If
party.
Biden had done this, I do believe that I would have been happy. If Biden had stayed in Afghanistan and shored up, the Afghani military forces, the president that was there, while minimizing American presence there, I would have supported that too. If Biden had, made sure that China didn't increase in its, influence here in the Western Hemisphere, I would have supported it. So is it a conservative value? Yes, absolutely. Is it a Christian value? Broadly speaking, I would think that if you want to hold on to Christian values, it shouldn't be surrounded by the hatred of Donald Trump. I don't know what else to say. I think there's so much hatred around this man that any affiliation with him, draws that kind of same hatred. There's so much hate against the vice president.
JD.
I have no idea why. I honestly don't.
He's an Ohio State fan.
People
probably.
are like, oh, he's worse than Trump. I thought Trump was Hitler. How are you making this now into a thing that he's worse than Trump? Unless you're so crazed and you're so deluded by Donald Trump and your hatred for him, it's going to affect and color everything. Your whole worldview is now affected by your hatred to Donald Trump. And I think we see that. I think you could criticize Trump. I criticize Biden. You could criticize Trump all day. There are so many things you possibly could do. I wasn't a really big fan of, his Rob Reiner, thing that he had, TDS or something like that. I think the dude just died. I know that he had TDS. I don't need to hear from you. I think we could just leave it be, give respects to the family that they lost someone like their father or their son or whatever it is, right? Their grandpa. And so, that's what we could do. There are some things that I would disagree about him and his usage of tariffs. There's some pros and cons. I could say here are the pros, here are the cons. However, I don't think that's what people really care about. They don't want a nuanced conversation about the things that he does. They just want to label him, and everything that he does is dictatorial. Everything that he does is fascist. And that colors your whole worldview. And now there is no conversation to be had. Because if you even give a nuanced view of the things that he does, you must be a maggot or something like that, right?
So what if someone were to accuse you then of having TLS?
Trump lover syndrome?
Everything Trump does, you like because that's your guy. What if someone were to accuse you of that?
I mean, that's cult personality. We've always had people like that. As a leader, you probably want to stay away from any kind of cult personality following, and you want to hold people to a objective standard. And I think the objective standard is given to us in the Bible, And so when you come at me and say, well, this guy is a 2 times divorced, whatever, 3 times married person now living this life, I go, absolutely. That is not only frowned upon, it's reprehensible behavior. And so we do not want to have these kind of characteristics, lauded or, even like looked up on. Obviously not. But is that all we want to focus on? Does that make sense?
Right.
And so if we all focus on that stuff, then, I could go all day into Biden, all day into Barack Obama. And people are, oh yeah, what conspiracy do you have? Yeah, exactly. And so it's just not worth putting that time and effort into just staying there and be like, oh, you maggot, Trump loving, blah, blah, blah. It's like, okay, I mean, if that's the way people want to see me, let me just continue to move and live life. I think that is why people can't talk about Trump even in a nuanced way, because I'm talking to our audience here, because you're so afraid of being labeled a maggot or a Trump lover that you won't say anything good about the man, right? And so, look at him freely, saying all these praises of Trump, and most of the things that he said about Biden was negative. I go, absolutely, I will say that. Because almost everything Biden did was anti-Christian. I kept on saying it on this podcast. This is anti-Christian. You can't allow for this. You can't allow for this. But did Trump go out there and be like, you guys should be like me and divorce twice and marry 3 times? He didn't say that. But if he did, would I be like, that we should follow that? I would say absolutely not. We shouldn't follow that. And so that's not what he was saying out there. He's like, I love America. I want to make sure this is good. And these are the things that I'm going to do. So here are, my policies. Here's the things that I've done. Here are the things that I'm going to do. And I could say, I like this and I don't like that. That's easy, right? So if Biden comes out and says, here are the policies I'm going to implement, and here's the things that I want, here's the things that I don't want. If he comes out and says that, I could be like, I like that or I don't like that. And guess what? I didn't like a bunch of the stuff that he did. I didn't like it when the government came in and then stopped state authorities from fencing up the border in Texas. I didn't like that. I didn't like it that they came in, they would take one of those excavators or, one of those construction trucks and then lift up the fence, physically lift up the fence, and then people were coming through the under the fence because the government had decided that it's too dangerous to leave people out there. And so that's how they decided we're going to, work on the border, because we'll let them come in because they're in, this kind of distressed state. We'll give them an app, we'll give them a phone, and all they have to do is then, schedule an appointment or a hearing with a judge.
Right.
Where most of the people did not even come to the hearing.
After they're in the country.
Yeah. And so we knew those things were going on. What about all these places where they continue to drive Congress, the number of congressmen, depending on the census, meaning your population at large, not citizens, but your census, the overall census, who actually lives there. So if you have a city, let's say a small city with 20,000 people, and 5,000 of them are citizens, but 15,000 of them are non-citizens, you get a representative representing 20,000. And people think that's fair because we got permanent residents and blah, blah, blah. But what about illegal immigrants? Should they be counted in the census? And the answer is yes, you count them too. So you got a lot of representation from these illegal immigrants, where people continue to say, which is almost like gaslighting. They're almost like gaslighting you. No. They don't vote. They don't get any representation. These are absolutely false, by the way. Absolutely false. They don't vote in federal elections, but guess what? A lot of state and local elections allowed for anybody that has a house or could prove their identity to be a voter in their county, city, whatever. And we saw that in New York State. And we said, oh, this is not good. This is not something that we want. And apparently then you were gaslit again into thinking that you must be a racist if you think that, So constantly things are going up. And so trying to swat down every single thing made you so tired. And so we said, I don't want to be labeled as a Trump lover. It's just not worth the fight. So I said, okay, there are going to be people like that. I'm going to be on the other side, where I want to say, These are the things that I don't like. These are the things that I like. These are the things that I believe are core Christian values, and these are the things that are not, right? And I could tell you every once in a while what my personal views are, what I think personally, because you never asked me if I personally like Donald Trump or not, and I've never given that that view here on the podcast. Because I think that's honestly, it's secondary or tertiary, whether I like the man
really important, right?
himself or not, right? But I will say here are the things that he's done, and this is why it's good. And people are like, oh, he must love Donald Trump, He must love Donald Trump. I was like, you don't know that. I was like, no, I know. Yeah, you know because you have this in your mind.
But you have Trump socks, though.
Yeah, I was about to say, someone gave me Trump socks and a Trump statue, like a little a statuette that bobs his head.
What is it called? Head bobber? What's it called?
Bobblehead.
Bobblehead.
He gave me a Trump bobblehead, and it has a little solar panel so that if the sun goes in, he starts bobbing and strumming his ukulele.
It's a good bobblehead.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think he listens to this podcast at times, so I appreciate you, brother. Those are things that I could honestly laugh about, and those are things that I want to just enjoy life, But if I give you my personal view, you might be disappointed either way. You might be a Trump lover and might be disappointed in me. You might be a Trump hater. You might be disappointed. I honestly think it's secondary, tertiary. I think for the podcast, I want to give you what I believe is biblically objective. And I get it that some of that objectivity may seem colored. But I'm saying then come at me with why you think it's colored. Tell me, and then we'll respond. And we have responded throughout the years, have we not? So we've responded. I don't wear MAGA hats. You do. But no one really comes at you, right? Did they come at you for that?
No, I'm going to stop doing things because all of a sudden I'm the czar against Halloween. All of a sudden I want to destroy Santa Claus.
Yeah, you hate.
And all of a sudden I just love Trump.
There's a book right behind you.
There's caricatures of me. There's like this idea of me that I'm these extreme things, but I'm not. I'm just a chill guy.
Yeah.
That's how I'm known around my house. I'm just a chill guy.
I think
there goes the chill guy.
Is different.
There he goes.
There's
the
guy who just sits on his butt.
No, not lazy. No, not lazy. Because I'm going. There goes the chill guy. There he goes. There he go.
Do you sit down on the couch and then when something happens in the house, you just get stressed but you don't move?
No, I roll out because my couch is a little deep, so I got to roll out. My hip flexors are not good, so.
So you're like, oh. You make the noise.
So I guess, when we think about this then as Christians, and perhaps I could possibly kind of summarize what you were saying, Pastor Eugene, and you could tell me if I'm right or wrong, but it seems like the way that we view current events, the way that we view politics, the way that we view our leaders, it shouldn't just be because we're fans of this person or that person or this policy or that policy, but we always have to line it up with Scripture. What does Scripture say? Not about maybe this policy, but about this concept, about this thought, about what's going on. How do we, as Christians with a Christian worldview, look at this through a Christian lens? That's how we have to see it, right?
I mean, one of the things that I like to think that a Christian would do is to see, let's say, a silver lining to a good degree on some of the things that our world leaders do. And we could say things like, if this leader comes into power, it's judgment against, the country. I think that's a pretty objective way of thinking about things. Why? Because this person is, let's say, pro-abortion, or this person says, Orwellian things like we must follow the rule of law while protesting against ICE and saying that we should, get ICE out of our state or something like that. That's pretty Orwellian, which, by the way, is Tim Waltz. But we can point those things out. But I am a little bit saddened at the state of affairs where politics has affected the Christian base so much, where we have people like David French and the like who would, just only say bad things, like Russell Moore, David French, only say bad things about Trump, never good things, only bad things, and wouldn't say any bad thing about Biden. Only good things. So it seems like it's a pretty biased. You say I'm biased, perhaps, but it seems like it's pretty biased, right? Because it seems as though we have fallen for this rhetoric that Trump truly is, a dictator or will be a dictator. It's always this kind of language that this is the next step to total dictatorship. It's like, what does that even mean? Because he's doing this without congressional approval. Everything's the next step to dictatorship, apparently, to these guys. Until it's never a dictatorship. But what you've done is you've riled up the masses. You've caused these scenarios where people will be so anxiety ridden about the state of affairs that we're in, that they'll do things that normal people wouldn't do. There's some crazy stuff that's going on.
So I want to just kind of maybe move forward a little bit, and we're going to be staying on theme here, though, because we just talked about something that happened recently that has drawn, I guess, opinions from both sides, and now even this past week, something has happened where it has drawn criticism and kind of comments from both sides, and it, of course, has to do with the woman that was killed in Minneapolis, Minnesota, by an ICE agent. This is kind of controversial in the sense that there are different people that have different sides to this story. So a 37-year-old woman was killed in Minneapolis this past week. Federal officials have been saying that it was self-defense after the woman tried to hit one of the officers with her vehicle, weaponizing her vehicle, which would be domestic terrorism. But others have condemned the ICE agent's actions, even the mayor of Minneapolis himself. So just kind of to give you a brief rundown of what happened, ICE agent vehicle got stuck in snow. Agents called for help. Protesters arrived, preventing them from leaving the scene. Then there was an interaction between a Honda Pilot, which is the woman's car, and ICE agents. And then, the Honda Pilot moves forward at one point where there's an ICE officer in front of the car, and ABC News reports that the wheels were turned away from the ICE agent, apparently, because they were trying to enter the vehicle, the ICE agents were. And so the federal agent pulls out his gun and shoots the driver. The U.S. Department of Homeland Security issued a statement on social media saying that a violent rioter weaponized her vehicle and attempted to run over and kill an ICE officer in what the agency has called an act of domestic terrorism. However, on the other side, and President Trump has kind of echoed this this that this rioter or this person that was violent, and other news agencies have said that they were stalking this ICE team, and so that's kind of what had happened. However, in a news conference, Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey said that the ICE agent recklessly used his power and called ICE's self-defense claim to be a curse word, BS. And he said, "Get the blank out of Minneapolis," in a message to ICE. But I guess, and this kind of has to do with the broader topic of ICE in general, or immigration and customs enforcement, because how are Christians to think about even ICE, right? Because it feels like perhaps it's the right thing done incorrectly. Like I get it. We shouldn't have illegal immigrants here. I get it. That's not right, and that's not a good thing. But it seems like kidnapping people and then bringing them back home, forcing them to go back home, isn't that a bit much? Isn't that why people are protesting against them? Oftentimes, not oftentimes, but sometimes even Christians protesting against them.
Yeah, I think John MacArthur said once that Christians don't protest. And so I think he was against the American Revolutionary War because we don't protest. We could agree to disagree on some parts, but the general sentiment is probably right. People think that protesting now means to disrupt, debilitate, deorganize the system out there. That's what true protesting is. So when they protest, they don't just chant out in the street where they have like a city block reserved, or they got the city's permission to do it. They just block roads now. Why do people block roads? And so that's not something that you do. So if you're a Christian and you believe it's in your right to protest, I do think that you should do it wisely. If you believe that it is your right to protest and you think this is a good cause, then don't block roads, don't obstruct traffic, don't impede federal officers or even state officers, city officers from doing their job. Don't do that. Again, we do have a lot of avenues here to let your protest be made known. Again, we are Protestants. So you know what we do? We go, as Protestants, you know what we do? We drive and we block all the avenues to all Roman Catholic churches and cause a disruption during services. That's what we do, right? No, we don't. We don't do that as Protestants. We don't drive to Roman Catholic churches and block the roads. And we were protesting, and we protest by telling them, oh, this is good, this is good, this is good. And they could kill us for it, which they did historically. They kill Protestants for it. But it doesn't mean that we go there and then, we cause disruption and all the things that they do. And plus, one of the things that we found out was this woman was a trained agitator for ICE. And that these are all things that she was not only doing herself, but she was telling other people to do. This is not good. And this is very, very unfortunate that we now have a group of people, so many, that believe that ICE is evil or they're fascistic or they're helping the dictator. And this kind of rhetoric has also been displayed by politicians, usually left. And this is very, very unfortunate. I feel as if now it really depends on just what side you're on. That's how you will interpret any kind of news or even videos. They'll look at a video, be like, she was just trying to get away, that kind of thing.
Because they were trying to get inside the car or something like that.
Yeah, she's just trying to get away from the ICE officer. Her intent wasn't to drive him over.
Just to correct myself, new video has been released in the past hour from body cam. She hit him.
Yeah.
No, she hit him.
No, she hit him.
No,
we knew that she
legit
hit him. From other angles, we knew that she hit him. Here's the thing, though, that people may or may not know. I think you should know. If you don't know, that means you haven't been watching any of the right news channels, I suppose. But it's been reported by various news stations, left and right, that this officer, which we won't name because he was doxxed, this officer, which we won't name, he was actually hit before 6 months ago.
Yes.
Or 7 months ago, in May or June or something like that. He was hit before and he was dragged like 100 yards.
Yep.
He deployed his taser and he tried to stop this person who was obstructing official government business, which is what ICE does, right? And they hit him and they dragged him. He had to get over 30 stitches. I think it was like 36
Being
or something
dragged
like that.
100 yards is crazy.
Yeah. And so here he is, and there is another crazed lunatic with the crazy eyes, with the crazy smirk, that is coming right at you. What are you going to do? You're going to go by what you were trained to do. If someone comes at you with, let's say, a 2-ton vehicle, which is an assault with a deadly weapon, then you will stop that person not only from potentially harming yourself, but other people who are in the vicinity. So if a federal officer stops you, then here's the basic rule of thumb that people should have. You should not try to get away with your car, potentially running them over. This is not about intent. This is about what you are actually doing. I don't care if her intent wasn't to run him over. It matters not. My intent wasn't to, hurt you. But you did. That's the point.
You
did.
hit him. Yeah,
you
but
did.
You hit him though.
Yeah. So what is this, all this stuff about intent? We don't know her heart. How can you be so absolutely sure about what her intent is? You don't know the intent. You know what actually happens. The fact on the ground, this is what we saw from multiple angles of this very, very unfortunate incident from many, many ways. So I think it's so unfortunate for many reasons. And I think the primary reason why I feel like this is so unfortunate is because so many people will look at this and immediately interpret it from their lens, which is ICE is evil or something like that.
Right.
Maybe you're on the right and you think ICE is always right.
Right.
Why can't we just leave it to the people that were on the ground, their testimonies, what they were continuously sharing? Who's a great reporter is Megan Basham. I really enjoy her reporting. I think she's spectacular, and She's a Christian, devout Christian. Recently, her bout with cancer has taken another turn, so people have been praying for her. She caught an interview before this interview went on CNN to do an interview about what this person originally was, because she was, familiar with what this person who was unfortunately killed did. And it's like, she was a trained agitator. She was trained in those things. She wasn't just a mother of three like the news is trying to purport now. Obviously, when she went on CNN, she started to soften up her tone. But the interview's out there for people to see, and you can follow Megan Basham on X or Twitter and see this interview yourself. But yeah, that's unfortunate.
Can I ask a quick question? And Junseok brought this up, and I was actually thinking about addressing this too, but since Junseok brought it up, I thought maybe it's worth mentioning. But you mentioned the fact that this officer had trouble before. Can't someone just say though, like, okay, well, if the same person is going through something like this, could we ever possibly think maybe it's his fault? Maybe he triggers people a lot. Maybe he's overly aggressive. Maybe he brings that out of people. Like, can't we also say that this could go both ways?
Yeah, absolutely. This is why we have checks and balances, accountability systems, and what people might, continue to look at. And these are things where, obviously the officer probably has some personal reflections on his own. Is this worth endangering my life for? And things of that nature. I think it's always, perhaps, there's a level of nuance that you always want to keep in mind. But basic things basic. At the time, we have these agitators out on the street, not only impeding traffic, but endangering the ICE officers and liking it that they endanger these ICE officers by trying to dox them, by trying to make sure that they and their families are then put in inherent danger. We have all these people out there because of the rhetoric that's been continually pushed. I am upset about that. I think Daryl Harrison called this person that was dead, that got shot and killed, Georgette. And he did it a little bit, sarcastically, I suppose, because these people now want to make her the next George Floyd for whatever reason, right? So he says this person's name is Georgette, but obviously it's not. It's Renee Good, but we want to make sure that what we want to kind of illuminate is the rhetoric that people are falling for. I said this on this podcast before. What the easiest thing to get people hooked on is? It's fake empathy. It's fake anger. It's to get people angry. So multiple studies are always done on how to get people hooked. How do I get you hooked on something? And it's anger. I get you so angry about something that you'll still play. And one of the key, industries that uses this is video games. Yeah. So if you were like in a first-person shooter or an MMORPG, and then you're fighting this guy, and then you die, and then you start smashing the keyboard, and you're like, I'm never gonna play this again. Guess what? That dude comes back just a few moments later, and then he starts playing again, right? And so there's two things. It's covetousness and anger, but I think that if an industry or an institution or whatever movement employs these two, we should watch out. Watch out, if they use covetousness and anger as a motivator, and that's exactly what the left does, to be honest. You should be covetous of all the rich people who are taking all the money that you should supposedly have. And number two, you should really be angry and all the injustice in the world, so angry that it just blinds you to everything else. I think there is a place for righteous anger. I think there is a time for that. People just want to be angry about the whole world, the whole system, everything. If that's the case, then why stop at the United States? I always say go all the way up to the devil and then go all the way up at sin. Be angry at your own sin. Let that anger you. Stop being angry at other people's sins. Let your own sin anger you so much. The first thing that you want to do is you want to get on your knees and you want to repent. And let your sin anger you so much that right before you go to bed, your prayers are filled with tears because you're so sorry to God about your sin that you committed throughout the day, and you're so grateful for the grace that He gave you, that He still gave you breath, even though you're such a wretched sinner. That's why you should be angry, more than anything else, more than all the social justice, reasons for you to be angry at your own sin. And then see if all these other things are really worth getting that worked up about. I think that's the really, really unfortunate side about the rhetoric that I see taking place, where we'll just see it from our lens, and we won't keep an objective view. We can't. Everything must be from a lens. Everything must be from this extreme bias that I have to hold because I'm always in the right. I'm the super standard, right? Because if I think that this is so terrible, then, I believe that this person thought that she was doing what was ultimately good. And that's the sad part. The sad part is no one told her, like, this is actually wrong. In fact, I believe the Minnesota governor, as we're recording today, said we should have a moment of silence for this person at 10 a.m. And then, we should be kind to our neighbor, blah, blah, blah. It's like, it's so Orwellian to the degree where you're like, oh, you're supposed to now think of this person and then do kind acts because she was a martyr. What was she a martyr for? For good. So it's all these things that you're kind of put in there to confuse, to convolute, to really, he contrives all these things to think that it's all these good things, but in the end, it really does diminish and take away from what he thinks is human dignity, but it takes away from our human dignity. He thinks our human dignity was taken away when this woman was shot. No, man, what you are doing is truly evil, and I hope people can see through that. I hope people do.
I think this is something that we have to keep an eye out for, because I think, again, like you said, this could be a return of George Floyd.
Georgette.
Thank
you, Daryl Harrison, for that.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting to kind of think about and watch out for. We're staying in Minnesota with this next topic, but in the past weeks, Republican Minnesota lawmakers testified that tax dollars that were intended for child care aid in Minnesota were being taken by criminals to purchase luxury homes, cars, property in Turkey and Kenya, and Democrats have known about it. This is known as the Minnesota welfare fraud scandal. And it started from way before, but it was, I guess, intensified this past year. At the end, between Christmas and New Year's, there was a YouTube video that came up in which a 23-year-old content creator claimed the Somali-run child care centers were taking the funds that were meant to provide child care for low-income families. The Department of Homeland Security and the FBI were on it. They were investigating the allegations. Then, in the midst of all this, Tim Walz announced that he would not be running again in Minnesota. And the estimate that we have heard now could top $9 billion. Most of the fraud defendants are of Somali descent. Daycare is just one of those things. There are more than a dozen other social service programs in Minnesota, including nutrition, housing, and behavioral health. And so this is a huge story right now in which this money was taken from the U.S. government, then used for personal use or even sent back to Somalia to, I believe, even fund terrorist groups.
Yeah, I think there was something. This is Scott Bessent. I think he came out in an interview. We're recording on Friday, so everything is new the next day.
Yeah.
And so when you're listening, this could be much older.
The old news.
Yeah. But again, we want to get to the principles of all the things that are going on. But I think the U.S. is going to try to change some of the regulations where if you send money overseas, you have to check a box to see if this was state or government, federal funded monies that you're sending across, right? Because it's kind of insane that people were able to take money that is state-sponsored, taxpayer funded, and send it to people outside the country, which is pretty insane. Mm-hmm. And so they want to minimize that, which is good. Good for Scott Bessent. And I hope that comes into effect real soon. And the amount of money that you send overseas should be limited if you are on, let's say, government welfare checks or something like that, okay? Mm. And so that only makes sense to me. If the government is giving you, let's say, $10,000 a month for food, and then you're sending $10,000 a month to something else, like out overseas, it seems you should be a little suspicious about how they're using the funds. So there's all this stuff that's going on. I do believe in my personal opinion, from what I've seen, I think this is just the tip of the iceberg. We'll see a bunch of fraud in all these other places around the United States that people have been using taxpayer-funded resources and doing highly illegal things with it.
I just think, though, a story like this it doesn't just impact our view on Minnesota. I think it just impacts our view on just the federal government and government in general. Like, how do we even trust the government? As a Christian, how do we look at this and say, you know what? Yeah, I'm going to continue to pay my taxes and support some Somalian terrorist groups. What are we supposed to even think about this? Because if this is happening in Minnesota, couldn't this also be happening in New Jersey? Maybe not Somalia, but anywhere else.
I'm 100% it's happening in other places. This is why I said what I said, I think, last week too. You keep on giving money to the government to do things like welfare or community support, which are things that the government is not able to handle, is not meant to do. You're going to see widespread corruption or negligence or both, right? And this is something that the government is not able to handle. I don't care if you really believe that Mamdani will bring the warmth of collectivism into New York City. You can believe it all you want. That's not what government's there for, and it won't do it. I can say for 100% fact, government cannot bring the warmth of collectivism instead of the cold, harsh reality of rugged individualism that he hates so much. Which is interesting. It's interesting because the warmth of collectivism does come from rugged individualism. It really does. Barnabas sold he sold a field and he brought it into the community. So the warmth of collectivism in the apostles, the first century church, was from this rugged individual who did that. So how can you have warmth of collectivism without the rugged individualism? And the warmth of collectivism does not come from the government. It just doesn't. It comes from people who sacrifice themselves willingly, voluntarily. That's what we saw in the church. This is what the commies out there really think that they can bypass. And they're just wrong. It just doesn't work like that. Every single commie state like Venezuela or the USSR, Germany, they all fail. Look at East Germany, fail. You know what I mean? And so when the Berlin Wall came down, did the Western Germans run to the East? No. Right? They all fled back to the West. That's the point. And so, these are things that we've constantly seen over and over again, because God's word is true, and you can't distort it to fit your own agenda and means. There's some things that are just so clear. I feel like we're fighting this battle on what is clear now, and that's the gaslighting. That's the gaslighting we continually see, and then they'll say, "Oh, you're gaslighting me." Okay, I mean, how can you argue with someone who's just gonna project? These are things that are really difficult. It's meant to tire you, and it's meant to have you sit on the sidelines. But to take each one for what it is and to bring it into light is a good thing, and hopefully that's what we're doing in our podcast too.
And I think that's helpful for us to consider it, and just, again, I think, entrusting that God is sovereign. And I think that's where the government mistrust begins, right? Like, how can they possibly do this?
I had friends that were so upset at Doge when it uncovered billions and billions of dollars in fraud and waste. And then they're like, look at the $1 million that it won't go to this really good agency. And all these people will die because this agency won't have the funds now to carry out its mission. And so Doge is evil. Are you serious? So if I get rid of, let's say, $500 billion worth of fraud and waste, but you don't get $100 million in this organization, we're killing millions and millions of people. So to save millions of people, we should continue to keep $500 billion in waste and fraud? I just don't understand the concept, the thinking. Shouldn't you, of all people, should be so upset that we could have been sending $500 billion to actual people in need, and $100 million might not go to this fund, so let's make sure that $100 million goes to this fund rightly, correctly, without the fraud, without the waste. Shouldn't you want that so it actually goes to them? Instead, it's like, oh, look at these millions of people are going to die because of Elon Musk and all the stuff that he's doing. Like, that's, to me, like, what happened? What happened to yearning for righteousness? Like, even if you are for the government helping, which again I'm not, even if you are for the government helping, why would you be against them at least curtailing some of the fraud? They're not eliminating fraud. There's so much fraud and waste out there. They're curtailing it to a minimum degree, in my opinion. I think there's more waste out there, and people are so upset. You know why? I believe it's because, again, we got these people who have their hands in the cookie jar. People like Tim Waltz and all these other guys, who are benefiting from this fraud in multiple ways. And time will tell. I believe that it will be exposed when we have a good leader in place.
Thank you for that. And I think for our last story, and it's kind of sad how all these stories are connecting. And you talked about this corruption being exposed. Well, this past week, Philip Yancey, who was a very popular Christian author, confessed to Christianity Today in a letter, confessed to an 8-year extramarital affair. He was married for 55 years, and from confessing to this affair, he said that he would retire from writing, public speaking, and social media. And I wanted to read that for us, and perhaps, Pastor Eugene, you could comment on this. And to be honest, this is happening way too often. Even on this podcast alone, we've been running this podcast for 5 years now. We've already talked about so many Christian evangelical leaders, pastors, authors who have fallen to the sin, and we've done too many episodes like this. But I'll read that for us. This is from Christianity Today. To my great shame, this is from Yancey, I confess that for 8 years I willfully engaged in a sinful affair with a married woman. My conduct defied everything that I believe about marriage. It was also totally inconsistent with my faith and my writings and caused deep pain for her husband and both of our families. I will not share further details out of respect for the other family. I've confessed my sin before God and my wife, and have committed myself to professional counseling and accountability program. I have failed morally and spiritually, and I grieve over the devastation I've caused. I realize that my actions will disillusion readers who have previously trusted in my writing. Worst of all, my sin has brought dishonor to God. I'm filled with remorse and repentance, and I have nothing to stand on except God's mercy and grace. I am now focused on rebuilding trust and restoring my marriage of 55 years. Having disqualified myself from Christian ministry, I'm therefore retiring from writing, speaking, and social media. Instead, I need to spend my remaining years living up to the words I've already written. I pray for God's grace and forgiveness, as well as yours, and for healing the lives of those I've wounded. And this is also a statement from Janet Yancey, his wife. I, Janet Yancey, am speaking from a place of trauma and devastation that only people who have lived through betrayal can understand. Yet, I made a sacred and binding marriage vow 55 and a half years ago. I will not break that promise. I accept and understand that God, through Jesus, has paid for and forgiven the sins of the world, including Philip's. God grant me the grace to forgive also, despite my unfathomable trauma. Please pray for us. So, statements from Philip Yancey and Janet Yancey. One thing that I've seen in response to this is not the irony, but perhaps the irony of Philip Yancey not receiving grace when so much of his writing was about grace. His most popular book was called What's So Amazing About Grace? And the accusation is that Christians have become the best at eating their own. Christians have become the best at not showing grace, that those who have been forgiven so much are not willing to forgive others. And that seems to be the accusation against Christians during this time in regards to this case. Where is grace in situations like this? How are we supposed to kind of think through it and learn from this that we've heard?
I think that BLI 17 as Substack put out a pretty decent article on this that you can look up. And this writer that I mentioned, I won't say his name.
I feel like we should only promote good writing on this podcast.
Likened this instance as a reminder to us about the dangers of sexual immorality, about how it can hit us at any age, including our ages when we're later in life. He talked about sirens or something like that, I think, and
He's always trying to add like Greek mythology and stuff, so he sounds more like legit. But
it was a good article. By the way, Starbucks uses sirens.
the mermaid.
Well, mermaids are from sirens, yeah, but Starbucks uses that because they wanted to. Isn't that ironic? The siren call is to call sailors who are weary from their long travel to say, "Look at me, you should lust after me here, this island, and then you could have all these good things." And by the time they're lured, they go into like rocky area. The ships break apart, and the sailors fall into the waters, and the sirens eat them. Right? Because over time, the depiction of this mythological creature evolved and developed. But it was like it's almost like one of those fishes with the half body of a naked woman up top, but inside they have these teeth that'll eat you. But Starbucks actually adopted that. Starbucks is what they started in like 1971 or something to that effect in Seattle. So it's a Seattle-based company in the 70s, and they eventually adopted the siren as their logo. And it's because they wanted to lure people into their coffee shop, which is so ironic because the siren call is you call them in and it's nothing but deception. There isn't actually a beautiful woman waiting for you. It's just something that will eat you and devour you,
Burnt
right?
coffee. It's just burnt coffee's waiting for you.
And that's exactly what Starbucks is. Yeah, it lures you into its storefronts, and all you drink is burnt coffee. Really, really terrible coffee. And you think that you got good coffee, but in the end, you're just devoured by man-eating fish, which is so good. And people bought Starbucks. They went crazy over this like bear cup or whatever it was. I forget what it was, right? It was a bear cup. Barista. Yeah, and then you could sell it for hundreds of dollars if you get it. Man, I mean, it's so good. If that metaphor isn't good, then they just duped the whole world.
Can I just tell you, this is from the Starbucks website. When you think of Starbucks, two things probably spring to mind. First, great coffee. Second, the siren.
Yeah, and it's not good coffee.
That's pretty funny.
Anyway, yeah, but yeah, people love their Starbucks. Why? Because there's nothing to it. It's just terrible beans.
What about pink drink though, or PSLs?
Yeah, maybe you should just get PSLs. In the end, I thought that was good. There is so I won't talk about the siren too much. I think you should go read again 17 BLI Substack. Okay, that's a really good article. And the dangers of sexual immorality, I guess, is until you're dead. I don't know. That temptation will be there. There is another mythological creature that we could talk about in addition to the siren, and her name is Lilith. And this is now Jewish lore. I'm not saying she was real, but Jewish mythological lore, there is a person named Lilith. And Lilith was actually the first wife of Adam. Again, this is not biblical.
We talked about this on that show that Amazon Prime made.
Oh, yeah? Oh, yeah.
Hazel's something.
I don't remember.
Yeah.
But yeah, so again, this might be a good review. But Lilith, ironic, holds all the values of today's feminists, by the way. They don't need Adam. Adam was trying to keep her from happiness. Being a life of a wife is having a life of a wife is subjugation. Blah blah blah. You need to be free. You need to be able to do things without the man. All that stuff. That's what Lilith represents. Eventually, Lilith has children, and they are succubi. And succubi, which is the plural form of succubus, are again demons that attract demons with a woman body. They adapt or adopt a woman body, not because they really have woman bodies, but they adopt it to lure men and they kill them or they eat them. So it's very similar to the siren story, but this is Lilith, which is interesting to me because the succubi, if you compare them with sirens, are the same, but succubi have a mother, and the mother's name is Lilith. And Lilith is the, is the embodiment of today's feminist movement. Or I should say that today's feminist movement is embodied by Lilith. Well, I said that. Yeah, it's the same thing, right?
Is that why they call them succulents?
Succulents and succubi are pretty
Because
different.
they give you the promise of beautiful flowers, but then all you do is just take care of them for years.
I think
and
it's very,
they're
very
just
important
green
that
and they do
we
nothing.
distinguish
I
succulents
wasn't
and
sure.
succubi. Okay, they're very, very different
The
things.
root word probably
If you
is the
have
same.
succulents in the house,
Throw them
not
out.
a bad thing.
Throw them
But
out.
if you have succubi in the
Get 'em
house, you might be possessed. So they're very, very different things. Mystique from X-Men holds a lot of succubi properties. Yes,
I guess.
I guess. Anyway, I read What's So Amazing About Grace maybe 3 or 4 times when I was in college. It was maybe one of the seminal books that I've read. I read when I was in Christian books when I was in college that really pushed me toward the path of ministry, which is really interesting. Philip Yancey was very, very sympathetic to the LGBTQ cause. But even then, I wasn't a pastor. I was like, yeah, we should love our LGBTQ brothers. And so I didn't have a problem with that. But it was pretty seminal to my ministry, pre-ministry experience. I do think that if anything, this should serve us as a warning. I'm not saying you should judge or not judge, blah, blah, blah. Why are even people talking about this? Philip Yancey serves as an example of how we need to guard our hearts, how we need to come into a place where we should be shaking with the fear of God, that we can't let any kind of instance, we can't open the door even for a millimeter for this kind of stuff to enter, especially if you're a leader, especially if you're in ministry, and how easy it is for it to enter. I think it should sober us up. If you had been thinking ministry is easy, I can just cruise now, man, think again. Because when you think you're on cruise, you don't know it. But someone's catching up. Someone's catching up behind you. And he's going to get you, And these are things that we got to keep in mind. Life isn't cruise. You can't cruise life. You'll fall. You'll crash. You'll burn. It's a warning to us, Whether you're judging or not judging, why is that even a focal point? His life serves as a warning to us.
Yeah.
You could be an inspiration to millions, and then at the end of your life, ruin that with this, and which is what he did. And so it should serve as a warning. I don't know if anybody can stand, to be honest. I don't think anybody can stand without the power of the Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
So you have to continuously rely on the Holy Spirit to strengthen you. And this is especially true for ministers. If you're an elder, if you're a minister, you have to that much more throw yourself at the mercy of the cross and say, God, forgive me and give me strength. There's no way. If people like Philip Yancey and all these people can fall, Stephen Lawson, all these people can fall at the end of their life, they can't finish the race well. You're going to stand before God and you'll be like, yeah, I kind of fumbled the end, didn't I? How sad is that?
Yeah.
How sad is that? If they do stand before God, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, let it serve as a warning to all of us young people out there who think that we're invincible now, and we're just cruising, but letting sin slowly creep up on us. And so I think that's how we should be thinking about this.
And I think that's a great way of ending this podcast today. Is just, I guess, in humility. We see all this corruption going on in our country. We see just the corruption of sin. And it's just for us to keep guard and to keep alert and to keep watch. I think it's a good reminder for us. Thank you, Pastor Gene, and we thank you for listening to this episode of the Dear Church podcast. We hope and pray that this has been a blessing in your ears. Fight the good fight, finish the race, keep the faith.
Peace.